Right, hello everyone. I'll kick off by sharing one of my personal and professional goals, which is to make sure that I'm a constant work in progress. So basically, you would be safe to say, well, but we grow anyway, we always grow automatically, that's fine, we change because we live in this world of change. But my goal is actually to do this very, very consciously. So I have this idea that any day that goes by where I haven't learned something or I haven't tried consciously to develop myself is a day wasted. And looking at you, I think that we are like-minded creatures. How do I guess that? Well, because you just spent all of your Monday, which we know is the day when we aim to do at least half of the week's job, in a conference, listening to presentations. So definitely, you have a curious mind and you want to learn as well. By the way, and for my own curiosity, how many of you feel that today has been a learning experience? From presentations, thank you, already some hands, great, that's fantastic. Presentations, talking to other people, maybe browsing your phones, but we don't want the organizers to find that out, or the presenters. So yes, I'll be the first to raise my hand. It has been an interesting day, and I'm really, really happy that you are still with us today. And as I said, while we are like-minded creatures in this room, and we want to develop ourselves consciously and with awareness, I'm afraid it's not the case for everyone, and you know that very well. But it should be, because otherwise we, if we give up this growth mindset, will become obsolete. And it's not only that we see change very rapidly around us, but it's some very serious research, psychological, economical, based on statistics, which show that if we don't do anything in a structured way to develop ourselves, to enhance our skill set, in 5 years' time, in this day and age, we will lose half of our skills. So half of our professional skills will be gone. In 5 years' time, we should be getting half of our salaries from today if we don't do anything. Now, of course, as ACCA, the association that I represent, is the largest international accountancy association, which offers the most in-demand qualification for accountants, it comes naturally that we are very interested in how and what people want to learn. Because we want our qualification to still be relevant in the next 112 years, because that's how old we are now. So what we have done, we have researched the subject very thoroughly. And, well, the respondents to our surveys and the results of our surveys are for accountants mainly. But what I firmly believe is that you will see the results are valid for all people. Because in the end, well, first of all, we accountants are people as well, despite some of the beliefs. We are not only the jackasses who are asking for your expense reports. And second of all, because the change in the learning environment is the same for all of us. And plus the sheer scale of these surveys, with thousands of people replying, make them very valid, generally, for everyone. So how have we done this survey, which I'm basing my presentation today? First of all, it's a very recent one. It's end of 2018. And it has been done through numerous options of research, roundtables, interviews, Meta studies, you'll see here on this map that Romania is proudly featured, and we have organized here several of the roundtables for this survey, and some of the Romanian ACCA members have been quoted in the survey, which is a reason for great pride to have Romanians in this huge global report. And last but not least, the report is based on the answers of 8,000 ACCA members, affiliates and students to the question of what and how they like to study. And believe me, they still want to study. What and how have indeed changed, but I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about that in the next 12 minutes or so. Okay, so the structure of my presentation is really split in 3 sections, all linked to learning. And you'll see some of the points are intertwined, so I'm going to brush over them quicker. You will see that the presentation is definitely going to put some structure on what you already knew or you thought you knew about how learning will change. So it's distilling the knowledge from all the research that we have done and putting it in a more understandable and coherent way, let's say. First of all, the first section is talking about what is driving the change in our careers, in the way we learn. Second section is asking the question, okay, so things are changing, we know that, we need to keep relevant for the future. What do we need to do today as employees, as employers, as companies, in order to make sure that we keep relevant? And third question, third section, is actually talking about how will the future learning landscape look like. Okay. So first section, what are the 4 main drivers of change? Because, well, we don't have the audacity to think we have singled them all out, but these are the 4 most important. They're not exhaustive, and they're not mutually exclusive. You won't be surprised to find out that technology is the first one to drive changes in the learning climate in our professional careers as well. And what is technology doing today is that it's influencing mainly entry-level jobs. Not only in accounting, I'm sure, but in any job. It's replacing routine tasks, and what this does is that young people, fresh out of university, be it a bachelor or a master's degree, are being asked or are being expected in an employer setting to provide an analytical, value-added activity on a set of data which is produced by a software, the background of which they might have no idea about. So what this does for the learning landscape, because this is where we are with our subject, is putting pressure, first of all, on universities, especially master's degrees, to upscale the information that they give to the students, to upscale the analytical skills of the students. What this does is putting pressure on companies to upscale their induction programs, because these people will need to be faster, adept at being able to interpret that data. And last but not least, it's putting pressure on mid-management, who are the first line of mentors for these young people entering the job workforce. Second factor driving change is the way the workplace itself evolves, and it's the way professionals who are in that working place have to evolve. No longer are technical skills a differentiator. They are still core for any profession, that's true. But the professionals need to be well-rounded human beings, first of all. We, any of us, is increasingly more exposed to scrutiny. We can have anyone from inside or outside the organization overseeing our job, coming to ask us a question for us to explain to them something. So we need all these soft skills, which are just important. We determined in another survey of ACCA, and this is how we came up with these competencies, which we have embedded in our qualification to produce what we call future-ready professionals. So we have never pretended, like I heard in another presentation, that accounting is the future. But what I can tell you is that in any future where a company is still using money and some sort of profit-based reporting, in that future you will sure find an accountant. There might not be an accountant who's just doing the counting, but it will be that well-rounded professional that ACCA is producing. And again, I'm generalizing it. It is not only for accountants. It's for all of us to strive to be these well-rounded professionals. Third factor, driving the change in learning, is how our careers are increasingly longer and how they are not linear anymore, and how we get to work with several generations, each having different expectations, all in one open space. So it's this freedom of changing our careers mid-path, or sometimes being forced to do so, which affect our attitude towards learning. Fourth, and not least, is self-curated learning. This is a list on your left, how people prefer to learn now, based on the 8,000 answers that our students gave in the global survey. And this is how they expect they will like to learn in 3 to 5 years from now. You'll see the shift is being increasingly more towards the kind of learning which is important and relevant to me, so personalized, important to me right now. So it's self-serving type of learning. And the freedom to do this will also shape the learning landscape of the future. Now for the second section of my presentation. What do we as employers, as employees, need to do today in order to be future-proof, maybe, not future-ready? Because I don't think it's an option. Oh, I'm ready or not. Well, the future will come anyway. We need to be future-proof. First of all, it's about that growth mindset I was telling you in the beginning. And not just because I'm an employee of an education company, and I need to say that, but me personally, I also have this attitude towards learning. I continuously studied throughout my life, also in structured ways. I have obtained diplomas which were relevant to my position or to the position which I wanted to gain in the future. So it's this constant curiosity which we need to foster in ourselves, and we need to spread the word around in people who might not have it. Because it's not an option to grow, it's mandatory. And I can't help myself but quoting a saying which I absolutely love, which says, everybody loves progress, everybody hates change. But change is the new status quo. It's not an option not to change. So you have to always, always be able, ready, willing to change, and that will be a differentiator. Also, what we found out in this survey is that it's best if you surround yourselves with like-minded people. Of course, in our survey, it was about the ACCA, our association, but you are here in ABSL, that's fantastic as well. And I think it's great when you are in a group that nurtures and grows you, and you surround yourself with people who encourage you and allow you to fail. And also, this might be part of being open-minded to growth. Second answer to the question of what would we need to do today in order to be ready for this future is take responsibility. Because with all these freedoms that we have to self-develop, to choose whatever learning we want to, because we have so much information at our fingertips, comes responsibility. You know, there's another saying which I love, with great power comes great responsibility. So if we want this power to be able to self-curate our learning, we need to be responsible. And this goes also for employers. I see in my 13 years with ACCA and another 6 with the National Professional Accountancy Body, I see a huge shift of power in learning styles. From the employer, who was traditionally seen as the parent in the relationship, providing training, the employees taking it, it's the shift of power towards the employee, who's more demanding. But it shouldn't be, as I've heard in some companies, the employer being almost afraid to offer the employee or to push the employee to grow in a certain direction because they are thinking the employees will leave, because they don't want to invest that time in their training. It shouldn't be that. The power of balance should stay there. So it should be a shared responsibility between employee and employer. So while the employee has to speak up and has to go to the company they work for and share what they want and what they think is important for them, also the employer needs to take this responsibility, even if in the end they will, for instance, borrow a member of staff from the outside talent pool because they couldn't grow that set skills inside of their organization. That doesn't mean that the employer doesn't still have the responsibility to further develop that member of staff. So it's something which needs to be done very consciously, and it's the responsibility of the companies to do so. Another responsibility that I think lies mostly within companies, because it needs to be done in a structured way, is putting a culture of learning at the forefront of every company strategy. As I said already, for us in this room, it goes without saying. Personally, we need to grow. And that's not an option. Companies know that also, but they need to stop thinking about development of people as a cost only. They need to see it as a means to grow in itself. So there have been a lot of companies who have put a continuous learning culture at their forefront. They are some companies who also have established corporate universities. They are making study groups within working days. They are allowing people to take free days to do online courses, and so on and so forth. There's lots of ways. I'm sure your companies are already looking into that, and it's the way to go forward. Last but not least, what we need to do today is to be aware and to do it very consciously that the learning ecosystem is changing. It's not only the needs or the attitudes of the learner, of the end recipient, the employee, that are changing. The whole ecosystem will change. It will change by itself anyway. But if we do it in a structured and conscious way, it will be a smoother transition, and it will be more beneficial for the organization who takes control of this change of the ecosystem and of all the roles that surround the learner. Last but not least, my third section, throwing our brains a little bit into the future. How will the learning landscape look like? And as I said, There are some overlapping points with the other sections, so I might brush over them. But how will the future look like? Well, our brains are the same as they were 2,000 years ago. So that's a constant. So the way we learn hasn't changed. Even if we now have lots of technology at our fingertips, we still learn the same by applying what we learn, experimenting, maybe failing, trying again. So it's no longer nothing new. So we can't bring anything new. What changes though is what we need now, what we need to do now in order to drive this change of performance, this increase of performance, how we need to use the new tools. So basically, our brain doesn't need to learn the same things it used to learn. Technical knowledge, remember, is not a differentiator anymore. We don't need to recall facts because information is no longer, let's say, the currency of exchange. Is the ability to interpret and validate and use that information, which is what is going to differentiate you in the future. Of course, again, technology will play a major part. There's no surprise there in how we will learn in the future, and you saw the other parts of my presentation validating this. And the learning community will need to change, as I said, and they will change. They will no longer be just the parents, they will no longer be the ones telling you what to do. They will be a valued partner in developing the proper programs that the company and employees need. So this is pretty much it for me. I think I'm also on time, which is great. Almost. Sorry, Colin. 4 minutes late. Almost. Almost. I'm an accountant myself, so I need to be fair. And
it was an Uber 15 minutes.
Oh yes, exactly. Okay, so this is a quick summary. Simplicity, not complexity, right? So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Andreia. I think we'll take a question. We'll take a question if anybody's got a question for you. No, I've got a question. A very quick question for you. So yeah, we're hearing about. I guess we're in a world of low unemployment in Romania, and I'm wondering how much that has an effect on young people in terms of their need to understand. I've really got to develop my skills because going forward, I need to be in front of the line when it comes to positions, because maybe life will not be so great then. I'm almost saying let's have a crisis because maybe this will change things. But does this have an impact on somebody's learning? Because it seems to me that because they're seeing such a changing world, their focus on technical skills is going to be less, because they may think, well, why should I learn that? Because it's going to change in a year's time. So I'm going to focus just on soft skills. Well, how are you seeing this, and how do we keep the technical skills interest moving?
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Colin. I think there's always going to be a mix. And for now, I have to say that young people's attitude is really forced by what the employer needs. So they would come into a workplace and they are expected to deliver something. So if they want that job, they will need to learn. It's true that technical skill is very much specific to that job of that employer, because some company uses some software, another company some other software. So they will need to learn that, and they might be excused in thinking that why should I learn exactly this specific software, because if I move to another company, then I won't need the same software. But in companies' defense, they are putting a lot of resources into these young people. So they are almost obliged to learn. They come with some lack of skills from university, they come into an employer who wants them up on their feet very quickly, because we don't have a crisis, because these people need to produce, thank God. So we need people in employment. So in young people, it's employers' attitude that drives the learning process, most of all.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Andreia, thank you.